IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong, strategic, national security-oriented policies. Our movement consists of more than 20,000 people in Israel, including many, many reserve officers and operators from all branches of the Israel Defense Establishment who believe that strong national security and staunch Zionism are necessary for Israel to be the eternal homeland of the Jewish people. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into these war briefings. It's so important to us that we're able to share these updates and analysis with you. We are joined today by Brigadier General Amir Avivi, founder and chairman of IDSF, as well as a very special guest from the Gaza border, Ido Zaga, who is going to discuss the very important work that he is doing there. We'll begin, of course, with the General. General, what can you tell us about the war today?
Yeah, so the operation in Gaza and the war is continuing as planned. In Khan Yunis, the 98th division, is attacking in Khan Yunis and closing more and more on the leadership of Hamas, which is, as we suspect, hiding inside the main headquarters of Hamas in Khan Yunis. So we're closing on this area. We have a division 36, that has launched 2 days ago an attack on the central camps in Gaza, and is concentrated now on a camp called El Burej, that is in the eastern part of the central camps. So the division is moving and destroying the battalion of El Burej, and then we have several other camps that we need to deal with. We see in the last 2 days fierce attacks of the Air Force, also destroying many targets in this area, and they are moving forward. We have a division that was left in the northern part of Gaza to clean this area, and it's Division 162 that are still operating in Jibalia and in other places, hunting all these remained terrorists and destroying infrastructure. So I would say that a part of the city of Rafah and all Gaza is under a ground incursion, and this is very meaningful and will have its impact in the coming weeks. We should see in the coming weeks, months and a half, Hamas brought down to its knees and losing its ability to be a government or a military organization. It doesn't mean that there won't be any terrorists or not at all the ability to shoot a rocket or a mortar or do a local attack, but Hamas as an army and as a government will be destroyed. And we are moving forward with this capability as the ground incursion is moving forward. The Minister of Defense talked this week about discussions that Israel is having with Egypt to build a barrier, something like we have on the Gazan border, on the Egyptian border, to prevent any ability to cross the border from above or down. This eventually will require Israel controlling also Rafah, but this is not happening yet. The south, the IDF went at the moment is Khan Yunis, and in Rafah, all the Palestinians are concentrated in Rafah and along the Moasi shore. So like 2 million Palestinians are in the south of Gaza, while the IDF is attacking, and more people are moving because the ones who were still in the central camps are now moving south. So this is creating a lot of pressure on the Gazan population, which we hope will turn out to start the Gaza population pressuring and attacking Hamas itself. We'll have to see when they'll get fed up of Hamas and do something about that. That might be quite meaningful as part of the efforts of the war. I can say that one of the things I see, when we are on national TV and even meetings with the generals in the IDF, how important is the voice of IDSF. I attended a meeting with one of the leading generals in the army. He invited several former generals for a briefing, discussing what is going on. And when you see some of our former generals, I must say I was ashamed. Like people who are weak, who are discouraging the army, who are also discouraging the society and saying, look, I don't know, I'm not sure we can win. Maybe we need to do a draw, maybe we need to talk. And this has no connection to reality and what's going on the ground. On the ground, we are destroying Hamas. We're attacking. Our troops are motivated. They're moving forward. They're asking only one thing. Let us do the job. That's it. We want to win. That's all they want to do. And they're doing it very well. But there are voices in the media and also former generals that try to discourage the society and the army, and we're not going to let this happen. This is why what we're doing on the media, social media, and with the meetings with decision makers is extremely important to embolden them, to encourage them, to give them the right messaging and the ideas in order to win against Hamas. In the north, the IDF is very systematically destroying Hezbollah positions along the border and distancing Hezbollah for a few kilometers. This is not 1701, it's not a complete withdrawal of Hezbollah, but they are working in a very systematic way to destroy them. And the fighting is pretty fierce. It's not with ground incursion, it's all by the Air Force and artillery and tanks, but overall they're working hard. And there will be a moment after we finish with the main missions in Gaza that we'll have to take most of our army north and deal with the challenge that we have with Hezbollah. I don't think we can avoid dealing with Hezbollah unless there is a success internationally to implement Resolution 1701 and get Hezbollah to pull from South Lebanon to the northern part of the Litani. It's not very likely that it will succeed, but definitely the government is going to try and do it. As we are handling the war, the army is all the time sending also reservists home, vacations, trying to get some of them to rest, preparing plans for a year ahead, understanding that this is going to be long and we'll have to use wisely our reserve army in a way that can keep things ongoing and keep our economy ongoing, because many of these reservists are, at the end of the day, also people who have to work. In Judah and Samaria, until now, we apprehended more than 2,500 terrorists, half of them Hamas. There is all the time IDF attacks in Jenin, in Shechem, in other places, apprehending terrorists, destroying infrastructure, and overall, the amount of terror attacks in Judah and Samaria decreased dramatically, certainly compared to what we saw in the last year and a half. Yes, 2,500 terrorists arrested, and even more by now. And there was a lot of attempt and talk to talk about settlers' violence. This week there was a publication that said there's 50% decrease in this kind of events, which are also not a big issue. So this attempt to really try to show a picture that our many, many wonderful settlers are a problem, I think anybody with the minimum common sense understands that this is not the case. So this is at the moment what's going on. And Moshe, back to you.
Thank you so much, General Avivi. I want to ask you one question before we bring in Ido. I don't want to make Ido wait too long. So Ido, you're coming up in a minute, but just I think it's an important question that touches what you mentioned. You said, General, that there's a group of older generals who are discouraging about the operations in Gaza and finishing the war. And then you noted that yourself, of course, in Abitchonistim, IDSF, disagrees with that approach. Now, IDSF is 20,000 people strong here in Israel, but that's not the entire Israeli population. What would you say is the feeling on the street? Meaning, if you're not a member of that smaller group of generals discouraging, and you're not yet a member of the 20,000 IDSF, what do you think the feeling on the street is in terms of continuing?
I think that the Israeli society is very strong and very determined to win. They trust the army. They trust the army to win. They trust less maybe some of the army's leadership, and they trust less maybe some of the politicians. And they're also worried about American pressure on Israel not to continue. But they have no questions about the ability of the IDF to win. This is the vast majority of the Israeli society. There are very few people who are like weak-minded, not strong, and pessimistic, and think that we cannot handle our enemies. Most of the society is very, very strong, and they know we can win, but they need to hear that, and they need to hear that from us, from the generals. I can say that this week I didn't go a lot on national TV because every evening I had a big event somewhere talking to groups. Last night it was in a kibbutz in the north, and many people came, and really they came because they need reassurance. They need reassurance that we're strong and we're going to win. They want clear answers. They want to understand exactly what's going on, and they want to get explanations that are professional and based on strengths and Zionistic values, and not people who are dealing with politics and immediately shifting the discussion to why this politician is to blame or this politician is to blame, or explaining that because we depend on the US, we won't win, or things like that. And it's not really the reality.
Thank you. Ido Zaga, thank you so much for joining us today during this briefing. It is really a treat for all of us to be able to speak with and see a person like yourself who has put his life on pause, really fighting for the state of Israel. These briefings that we do, we very often focus on the big picture, the strategy, the big operations, the diplomatic issues, but we need to really talk to Chayalim, soldiers on the ground, to hear the personal stories and what's really happening. So please, Ido, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you're doing right now on the Gaza border, please.
All right. So hi, my name is Ido. I'm currently serving in a unit it gets rebuilt every time during wars in order to evacuate soldiers from war zones. We don't actually sit inside of Gaza. We sit somewhere on the border. We have a little camp that moves depending on where the forces that we're giving the medical rescue for, where they end up inside of Gaza. We sit on the border and we wait for their calls. Whenever there's a call for casualties, we end up coming in or going to the border to meet them, or coming in, very much dependent on the situation. We come meet the soldiers with the casualties and we evacuate them. Our squadron is a mix of both doctors and combat medics that are in army ambulances, and then they're also protected by Hummers with combat soldiers that are kind of protecting them in every situation, and that are also available to talk to choppers and kind of have choppers land in terms of very specific emergencies where we need to get to the hospital much sooner than the ambulance can. We give our medical treatments, of course, hopefully hopefully we don't need to anybody, but both to soldiers and also to Gazan civilians. If they end up being in a line of fire and needing any specific treatment, we bring them to Israel, treat them, and then they get brought back into Gaza. Yeah, that's about it about me and about the unit.
It sounds like very holy work, obviously. If you could elaborate for a moment on the Gaza civilians, how does that work in terms of treating them, in terms of taking them out of Gaza? I don't know if you said you take them out of Gaza and bring them back. Can you elaborate a little bit on that piece?
Sure. It would have to be in very specific situations. I would have to say that it does not happen often, because it's pretty rare for civilians to walk around these war zones. But I can give an example for today, which was pretty rare, but we have an 80-year-old civilian that was caught on the line of fire, and he needed aid. So he was brought over. The forces called to us. They said that a Palestinian civilian that got shot, and we had to bring him in and treat him, and then also take him to treatment.
And then most of the people you're treating, they're coming into Israeli hospitals, or you're able to manage it on the ground there and send them back wherever they're going?
So for soldiers, our main mission, since the hospitals can give the best treatments, even though we have doctors and medics that are available on hand, it's always better to get to the hospital. So it's usually some sort of local treatment that we give just in order to postpone everything and get to the hospital. Of course, if it's a disastrous situation where you have to treat them right on the spot and you don't have the time to get to the hospital, then we're able and we can do all the treatment. We have a ton of very high quality medical equipment, and we have coolers with blood, and we have plasmas, and we can honestly do basically any medical operation that is needed, which is also why the percent of casualties that end up dying are very low. I think it's, as of today, probably around 6 or 7%, which is considered very low. And it's honestly thanks to our availability of treating. We do not do heart transplants on the spot. I saw that somebody was asking.
You broke up for a second. You do not do
heart transplants. Somebody messaged in the group. Yeah, I think it was a joke though.
Okay. Okay, so in terms of the casualties, here in Israel, 6 a.m. every day, they announce the fatalities. It's a very tragic way to start your day, listening to the radio. We don't really focus as much on the casualties of war. Can you elaborate a little bit on the volume of or the severity of casualties? When the IDF announced casualties, is that a broken finger, or is that obviously something more severe?
Yeah, sure. So honestly, it can very much depend. I can say in full honesty that I don't know specifically what they decide to claim as casualties, but the things that end up coming through us can be as severe as gunshot wounds and even heavier traumas, either from RPGs. It can be just like shrapnels from grenades that might be a little less severe depending on their location and where they were hit. And it can also be things that are much more minor, whether it's a broken finger that somebody needs to go have looked at a hospital, or things like that. It can also even be a psychological treatment. If you have somebody that has some sort of post-trauma starting up because they were in the situation, and we've had treatments of soldiers that were endangering the people around them while they were sleeping because they had some trauma that needed treatment. We also have social workers that are not with us in the field. They're back, but we can take back to them and they can give some sort of on-site treatment to the soldiers that are having this psychological stress. But yeah, it really, really varies. A lot of different casualties in war.
Yeah, it's really important for us to hear all of this, and even the level of care that the IDF has to send out social workers is really amazing. I imagine you're putting yourself in harm's way when you go into Gaza under these circumstances. What's the morale like in your unit, who day and night you're really seeing the hardest part of this war?
We really try to keep the morale high, and I think it's usually pretty easy. Especially, and of course, hopefully, we're always hoping that when we get a call, it's always somebody injured, and it's not a fatality, that it's always casualties. And it really almost always is the case, which is nice. I think both for us to know that it's casualty and not worse, and also because we get to see them and talk to them and see how high their morale is and see how much they're just begging to go back in. And it's always them asking how much time until I can go back in. I need to go back, help my team. I need to go back and fight. Like, can you treat this quickly? So of course, it's always reassuring to have this close contact with the people out in the field and see how much energy they have.
Wow. I mean, to think about a person lying on a stretcher in pain and vying to go back in really speaks to the caliber of these soldiers.
It's
Now,
incredible. It's incredible.
Just to clarify for all of us, in terms of you are a reservist, can you explain what does that mean for taking a pause in life, and how does that work in terms of other obligations that you and people in your unit have?
Sure. So age-wise, we really differ. I'm on the younger end. I got released from the army about 2 years ago, and I was supposed to start school this year. I'm starting law school in Hebrew University, so I moved to Jerusalem. Unfortunately, my apartment is empty, for example, and I'm still paying for an apartment because I already moved in. But it really varies. I think we have people all the way up until their 50s even, both doctors and also combat medics that really push to come in to help out. But yeah, reservists really vary in age.
So for all of our viewers, in a few years from now, if you need a good Israeli attorney, we'll
You can hit me up. Yeah.
What else can you share with us? You have an audience right now of many Zionists and supporters of Israel from the US, the UK, Canada. What is the most important thing for them to hear about this war, and maybe what they can do from their own homes?
I'll try. There's a bunch of questions jumping up, so I'll try to answer. In terms of affording school, the government helps a ton. Combat soldiers, actually, they released a statement right now that all combat soldiers are getting a university for free, which is really nice. It was 70% discount up until now, but with all the war and everything, it's 100%. So for combat soldiers, school's fully off, and for non-combat, you also get a discount after this war. But in general, it's pretty cheap. It's not like the States, where it's astronomical prices. What else can I say? Are there any other questions that maybe I can answer to direct me in?
I think that's it in terms of the questions coming in. If you have any parting words for our viewers, and then we're going to go back to the general for another question or two. Anything there?
No, I would just like to say thank you. I think it's really important. It's really hard. I think that on every step along the way of supporting Israel and being a Zionist, especially in times like this, everybody feels like they're too far from the battlefield. And we've been getting it a lot. With people on the battlefield feel like they're not far enough. People in the north feel like, oh my God, I'm not in Gaza. I think it's very Zionist and Jewish to kind of want to be able to volunteer and to do everything and help with everything. And I think it's really important to remember, even for me as someone who's doing medical care, but I'm not strictly on the battlefield fighting and killing Hamas terrorists. I think it's really important that all of us remember that we're in the same goal together, and everybody's job is really important. And in these words, I would honestly like to say thank you guys, and that your work and you guys' support, it really matters. It matters for us in the field, that we get a lot of donations of equipment. It matters in terms of the government and the policies and how much Israel can keep fighting this war, and everybody's job matters. So thank you very much, guys, both for being interested and bringing me on and hearing a bit, and also for supporting. I think it's really important.
Ido, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, of course, for your service. Please keep yourself safe and keep up the amazing work.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
General, if I can ask you a question, and then we'll see how long it takes to answer. There was an Iranian spokesperson who came out with a statement that the October 7th attack was in response to a 2020 assassination that Israel carried out. And then a Hamas spokesperson publicly refuted that claim. Do you think there is now a breakdown happening between Hamas and Iran?
I don't know if it's a breakdown, but Iran is basically losing completely this asset. At the end of the day, Hamas will be destroyed. So I think that everybody there is talking mainly from a place of a lot of pressure and looking at what's going on. And Iran is, I think, shifting more what they're doing to Syria, to the Houthis in Yemen. They are more worried about what's going on at the moment with Hezbollah. This is mostly what they're dealing with. This is what's going on. I don't know how much Iran can impact anymore what's going on in Gaza.
A lot of our viewers were writing in questions as Ido was speaking about the IDF treating Gazan civilians. Do you have any thoughts about this to give us context of what this means?
It's very hard in the war to understand exactly who is a civilian because all the Hamas are on civilian clothes as well. There are many civilians who are helping Hamas and directing them to attack Israeli soldiers. And what the IDF is doing is mostly calling people to go out of war zones, to concentrate in the places where there are safety zones that we allocated for them. But we have to understand this is a very, very radicalized society. They massively support Hamas. And this is the reality that we have to deal with now and also the day after.
Well, thank you to you both for joining on this briefing. I'll let all of our viewers know that tomorrow our briefings continue. Tomorrow we have two very special guests who will be joining us. We're going to speak with the head of the regional council of all of the Gaza area Jewish communities. And we're also going to speak with Major General Gershon HaKohen, who, among other important responsibilities in the army, he oversaw the 2005 disengagement from Gaza. So he certainly has a lot to share. So I hope everyone will please join us for these very two important guests tomorrow. And with that, General, do you have any parting words for us today?
Yeah, just say that we are building very strongly in our grassroots movement all over Israel. Everybody wants to engage with us and be part of what we are doing. Israelis want to see strong leadership, strong officers, and professional ones with also with common sense, and it's very exciting. We're doing many exciting things now throughout the country.
Amazing. Brigadier General Miravivi, Ido Zaga, thank you so much for joining us. All of our viewers.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ido.
Thank you so much. Stay
Thank you,
safe.
guys.
Stay strong. Take care. Ido, thank you so much.